Hey, if you got this part of the video, you've got the live unedited edition. Home Gadget Geeks. It's Thursday night. It's October 20th. I've said that now 550 times, Christian, at some point in time. You were at the very first one, 550 of these, 549 of these ago. Welcome, welcome back.
Yeah, this is a one index numeric system, but yeah, good to be here.
Could you help me out with that? It's been a long day. It's
550 minus 1.
Right. 540. If you include the first one, if you're not counting it, I don't know. It doesn't work. We've done 550 of these. I think the last time I had you on was 500. So it was 50 ago, I think, which would be, I'd say a year ago, but I don't think that's true. I think it was December of, or 2 years.
I was somewhere at the midpoint, but could be wrong.
Because we did 500. No, 10 years was December coming up. Who cares?
Yeah, but I think I was on in early, late spring. I think it was somewhere in the 500 series.
I think so. Well, welcome back. If you're joining us for the first time, a little bit of pre-show here. And if you're joining us on YouTube, just because you found this, I don't know how you would, but if you did, hang tight. We'll get started here in just a second. We got some, we're going to talk a little, we're going to catch up with Christian for one. We're going to talk, we're going to have a fair and balanced session on crypto from a little, I won't say a rebuttal, but a different opinion on crypto from Christian based on last week's episode. And then we're going to talk PC builds. So that's coming up. If you've joined us for that, you will want to, we are live. You'll want to stay. We'll get started here in just a second. We'll give everybody a moment to get in here and to join us. I see Ken and Brian, John, thanks for coming out. Justin, good morning, Justin. He's over on the other side of the planet and south of us. So Justin, good morning to you. We'll get started here in just a second. Christian, you have any special beverages tonight or anything?
I don't. I went, well, depends what we define as special. Unspecial is I've gotten to the bottom of this newly flavored tart cherry limeade seltzer, which once in a while you get surprised by what you'll find at
your local
grocery store. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Who makes it?
Different. Who does make this one? Great question. It's a Polar. They kind of have rebranded. You know how it used to be Polar with the little bear on the front? Now it's all sorts of different graphical renderings on here, but yeah, they're pretty good.
No, I don't know if I've ever had a seltzer.
They call this a seltzer aid in this particular brand.
Cherry, what's the flavor?
It is called Tart Cherry Limeade by Sparkling Polar with essence of fresh limes. And it is guilt-free with no juice, no sweeteners, no sugar, with natural fruit flavors, naturally calorie-free, also known as 0 calories per can in a 12 fluid ounce or 355 milliliter form factor. What? And you can learn more about this at polarseltzeraid.com.
Man, they're not a sponsor. They didn't pay us to say any of that. For the 200 people that watch the YouTube video, there'll probably be 40 on this one, and then.
But I will accept sponsorship because it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Pretty good stuff. Yeah. Pretty good. It's just, and it's not. There's no alcohol in it.
No alcohol. It's not. It's not like the Claw. It's not a White Claw. I'm sorry to disappoint all of my White Claw friends. I'm very sorry.
It's your generation, my friend.
Yeah.
It's your generation.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have a Woodford Rye. I've had this several times on the show. It is my favorite. I finished up the bottle tonight. Well, okay, I didn't finish the bottle.
A bad of a week, huh?
Woo! Wow. Yeah, I would be on the ground. There would be no podcasts if I had finished the bottle. But we were getting to the end of the bottle. I did a pour, and then there's a little bit left, and so it made its way into the infinity bottle, which is when you have just a little bit left. Everything gets poured in that bottle, and it kind of mixes all together. And so, though some of that is in there now. Refilled the infinity bottle. Jay, welcome. Good to see you out there. Jay's checking in. Ken wants to know if there's a new Cyber Frontiers scheduled. Christian, while we're in pre-show, let me run this by you. What if we just did a Cyber Frontiers edition on Home Gadget Geeks? How'd you feel about that?
I don't know.
Like when you are ready to talk about something, you just contact me. We just put you on a Thursday night.
I haven't decided what percentage of Home Gadget Geek listening audience can handle the cyber diatribes that we sometimes get into. I will say though, there are several shows in my head that I would like to get out there. There's a new book getting ready to drop on cyber myths by some really great folks, and there's a lot of different topics in that space that I think we could drill into. And yeah, there's some new content matter I think about as I'm doing random miscellany things, but it's very hard. Mondays used to be our stable recording night, and Mondays are no longer a good recording night for me. So between my bad Mondays, Thursdays being Home Gadget Geeks, and Jim's podcast row show, it's tricky to figure this one out.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily be opposed. I'd be curious what the Home Gadget Geek audience thinks of that idea.
John says you keep them separate.
Yeah.
So no surprise there. And then Justin just says you can't handle the truth. So I'm not sure if Home Gadget Geeks could handle Cyber Frontiers. Is that what you're saying, Justin? I think that's what he's saying. Brian said as soon as it pops up in the API here, Brian says it'd be great to him. So yeah, I think like anything, Christian, if we put it out for a poll, I'd bet it'd be 50-50.
Yep.
Half would be like, oh yeah, just throw it in there. It sounds interesting. The other half would be like, no, I want Cyber Frontiers. I think what I'll tell you is, oh shoot, I didn't grab the processor. What I'll tell you is when you're ready, just ping me and then we'll pick a day and we'll just do it.
Cool.
And so if you've got some topics you want to do, I think for now we'll float that out there with you guys. If you want to let me know in chat, there's a little less than a dozen of you out there. If you want to let me know in chat a little bit how you feel about that. I've thought about it just from a simplicity sake. It's a lot easier if we do it on this regular Thursday night schedule. But that being said, I do understand the expectations of the listener. I want to make sure you guys are getting what you want. So for now, I'm not going to do anything. I just thought I'd throw that out there. One, I wanted to see what you thought of it. I think your instincts are, no, actually, I think we can get enough content out there. We could probably keep it rolling. I think that would be your gut reaction. Did I read that right?
I think so. But you of all people know that Cyber Frontiers originated out of Christian's Corner, which was a dedicated segment on this show. So for anyone who's like, it's impossible to do, you're wrong. And I have hundreds of shows to prove it.
That's true. Well, maybe 100. I think at 100 we changed things.
Yeah, probably.
I think you stopped coming on. You were getting busier and busier, and then you stopped. And I lost Andrew. Then we had a Mike. Then I lost Mike. So there's been others. All right. Well, that's Justin just says, hey, there's a dozen of us here and there's only 4 likes. Well, yeah, you throw a few more likes if you'd like. You don't have to, but it makes me feel good. So get that done. If you've joined us on Twitch, I can see your chat. You can't see the YouTube chat, but I can see you on chat. So if you're on Twitch, do that. I don't get any Twitch numbers in real time, but if you get that, that'd be great. Hold on. Ken says ideally separate, but I don't want to see it die. It would not die because of that decision. It's just, I think I might be a little more motivated to get them done if they were just Home Gadget Geeks, because that's in a really repeatable. Christian, one of the things I'm learning about myself is that once I get in a routine, I am unstoppable. Right now, getting to the routine, that's the challenge, right? If I can get it, the quicker I can build it into a routine and go unstoppable. I mean, 550 of these, right? But so it's patterns for me, it's getting in those patterns.
Yeah. funny. I feel like if I had learned those patterns with respect to studying, undergrad would have been so much easier in some respects than I made it out to be. So I can relate, but it's very hard for me to internalize. I in some ways find that I perform better in life when I'm under pressure to do
Yeah.
something,
Yeah, I agree.
which is not a great thing, by the way. But sometimes it's a needed motivation.
It's worked well for you.
Yeah, it's
I mean, I don't
worked.
know how good it's been for your health,
I've had
but
to learn to
yeah,
learn some of those things, like
yeah,
good
yeah.
repeatable habits. So
See,
yeah,
that's how I would not characterize your undergrad as being that way. Now, I mean,
yeah.
on the
Well,
surface, it looked like you were in absolute control.
uh, enough.
Should we ask your roommates?
Yeah, I was gonna say we can do a roommate show and dispel that myth real quickly, but
That
you know,
would be kind of fun to go.
it'd be terrifying.
We should get them all back. And I mean, we had Franz on, so that we didn't talk about what it was like to be hanging out with you. Um, it'd just be fun to get that recorded from a legacy standpoint,
Yeah,
someday you could go back and say, yeah, I talked about that, 10 years ago, whatever. Uncle Mars says he's on the fence, wasn't around back then. I appreciate that. And Jay says he liked it. So Jay, thanks for jumping out here tonight. Appreciate it. All right, let's get some things kicked off. I appreciate you guys' feedback on that. And yeah, I won't change anything right away. But it's good to, I mean, I work for this company that does some survey research, and I thought that'd be good to ask the question at least. How do you guys feel about that? So, all right, here we go. This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks show number 550, recorded on October 20th, 2022. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a weird Bellevue, Nebraska. We can't decide. It was 20 the other day, and then it was 75 today. Weird part of fall. Not quite sure what we want. And of course, but it'll get there. Winter's on its way. We post a show with some world-class show notes. Tonight, there might be a few. Christian and I are going to spend some time talking about PC builds, kind of continuing in that series. And so there may be some links to that. So we'll post that out at theaverageguy.tv. Big thanks to Edward Weniger, who joined us last week, spent some time talking about Alpha Bitcoin, his company, as well as crypto and crypto prices and crypto mining and some of those kinds of things. So big thanks to Edward for joining us last week. And then also big thanks to our Patreon subscribers. If you're finding value in this podcast and you want to give back, you can join us on Patreon. Head out to theaverageguy.tv/Patreon. $5 a month. If you want to do, you can do it for 1 month or as long as you want. If we're giving you some value in that and you feel like you want to give back, you can do it that way. Theaverageguy.tv/Patreon. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but Christian Johnson is back on the program. It's always good. It's like just a warm sweater for me that's kind of worn out and old, but it fits well and I like it. Christian, you're always great to have on. Welcome back to Home Gadget Geeks.
I'm always happy to be a warm blanket. It's good to be back. We're at show 550, which makes me feel a little old in my own young right. But great to be here.
Good to have you. We've been doing this a long time. For anybody new, Christian, you were part of the original crew that helped me start what in the day was called Home Tech, and show number 1 through, I want to say, about 100. And then some things changed, and we had you back on about every 50 or so. You're the genius behind Maple Grove Partners. And so if you haven't checked it out yet, I say this at the end of every show, and you're always like, I always say, high speed, reliable hosting you can trust. And that's Christian. And you're like, who is this Christian guy? Well, there he is. He's right next to me. There he is. How are things at Maple Grove?
We're actually having a lot of fun. We're working on new software initiatives within Maple Grove. Hosting is now kind of the product side of Maple Grove Partners, which is the company that owns the hosting platform. And we're having some nice uptick in customer adoption and trying to keep curtailing to what folks need. So Maple Grove is rocking and rolling in the free world.
Are plans still $10? How are you doing this in this time of spiraling inflation?
I say the hell with inflation and give the great things to the masses, damn it. But no, it's good. So we've actually made some changes to how we do our client management and point of sale. So one of them is we've added direct credit card charge, which was a big thing that folks wanted. So the era of PayPal subscription for all the things is kind of annoying for a good portion of customers. So we are doing direct credit card payment processing now through Stripe, which actually helps quite a bit with transaction fees and the like. And we've also changed, actually in the last month, we changed the cost structuring. So if you want the $10 a month for the good 99% plan solution, you prepay annually, and that lowers down on our transaction costs, and it lowers down on the amount of just nonsense going on. So if you don't like PayPal, but you want the rate and you want to use a credit card and we want lower fees and overhead, prepay annually, go with that. If you want to do monthly or semi-annually, it's basically $1 increment up from there. So if semi-annually, it's $11 a month. Monthly, it's $12 a month. We think that's fairly fair for where we've been, which has been $10 a month, whenever you want, however you want. And yeah, the reality is that transactions and payment processors and all those other things are kind of annoying. We could care less about inflation. That wasn't really our motivation for it, but we're just trying to simplify the customer experience and give folks more diversity in how they check out and work with us. And so we made those changes here in the last month, and we'll see how it goes.
Great. Yeah, no, great service. And the other day, I noticed an error on my page and I pinged you and you're like, oh yeah, we upgraded. Hold on. Check it now. All right, it's good. And then, of course, WordPress always struggles. And I always tell people you're kind of WordPress optimized just because of what you got to do to support me.
Yeah.
You're kind of podcast specialized in a lot of ways because of the same reasons, right? I mean, we've been on the network from pretty much from day one on it. So just gives you an opportunity to just be really, really good at that. And so we had those fixed up, and I won't think about it for another 6 months again when something else, because something's bound to happen, right? It's not gonna be flawless forever. You're gonna have changes, you're gonna need upgrades, right? I mean,
We love flawless, but the last hiccup
yeah.
that you noticed was in part we've just finished our migration of all of our standard plan customers from the PHP 7.4 ecosystem to PHP 8, which may not sound like a big deal, but this particular upgrade had a amazing number of language backwards incompatible changes between PHP 7.4 and 8. And so a lot of WordPress plugins and other PHP code had to be tested for compatibility. There's a lot of older plugins out there that folks had still been using that needed to be patched for PHP 8 compatibility. So it was a fair amount of work for us to work with customers and work with our environment for the managed ecosystem to get everyone running healthy and happy on PHP 8, which is kind of a mandatory thing at this point, right? PHP 7.4 is end of life. Its security patches stop in November, so it wasn't like we were on the bleeding edge. We always try to phase customers to the next PHP towards the tail end of when the current version is going to hit that no more security drop off, because we maximize on the stability aspect. But security is non-negotiable. So if it's no longer going to be security supported, sorry, you're going to PHP 8 kicking and screaming, whether you like it or not. And so we tried to minimize that pain for a lot of folks. There's a lot of folks who would pick a shared hosting plan like GoDaddy, and they'd have to figure that out for themselves, and it'd be kind of sad. So just one of the kind of aspects of how we do things differently at Maple Grove.
Yeah. And contact to you and like, hey, what about this plugin? And I'm like, okay, it was a plugin I hadn't paid for in a while. So I went out and paid for it, got the upgrade. We put it in there, boomo, and was all set and ready to go. And we had that corrected pretty fast. So I love that, Christian, because I just know you'd love to live in a perfect world, but perfect is super expensive and really hard to do. And for me, doable, working, you being great at the customer service that you do and providing great service. I've just heard nothing but great stuff. So thanks for hosting Home Gadget Geeks all these years. This December, I think we're coming up on 11.
Yep.
And that's crazy. That's just crazy. Like we're super close to that. Anyways, thanks for doing all that. Eric Janofsky contacted me via email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Actually, it wasn't that address, but that's the one I want you to use. Jim@theaverageguy.tv sent me an email on Sunday and said, "Hey Jim, your view with Edward on Sunday was not very balanced." That's his word, not mine. And of course, Edward, comes from Alpha Bitcoin. They are a mining hosting company that spends some time or spends most of its time making money off mining. We spend a lot of time about miners. Christian, you and I have talked about crypto off and on. You haven't been, while I've been the crazy mining on the forefront of it, you've always been cautious, I think. My words, not yours on that. And so I said, "Hey, Christian, Eric wanted another opinion on this." And I thought it'd be nice to kind of come back to that conversation, especially from the impact to the environment question, because I think that's really what sets a lot of people off as we just think about the enormous amount of energy that gets pulled into, if we think of just Bitcoin, right? The enormous amounts of energy. Some of the hard drive mining that I've done on smaller projects, of course, doesn't consume that kind of energy, but it is consuming some. It's not like it's free. It's not like we're all getting our energy from the sun. We're not there yet on some of those kinds of things. So, Christian, let's get your take. And I prepped you with this in advance, so this isn't necessarily just off the top of your head. But when we think about Bitcoin and energy, what's your take on that? And just give us opinions that you can share.
Yeah. And again, full disclosure, coming from someone who is not the avid, deep in the rabbit hole of the blockchain guy on a day-to-day basis, it gets worse before it gets better, is the short story. When you look at Bitcoin and Ethereum combined, and if you were just to treat them as one kind of entity, they rank in like the top 15. It would rank as a top 15 country of power consumption. So Bitcoin and Ethereum combined, if you amortize the power usage and annually, is like well over 300 terawatt hours at this point. And so that gets worse before it gets better. Ethereum has had a lot of commitments and discussion and talk about how their 2.0 system is basically going to be a carbon zero implementation. And this is the pressure in this space is being well applied. So even from I will cite things, I will make it as apolitical as possible. I just look at things. But there was an assessment done by the White House, and they published a report in September entitled "Climate and Energy Implications of Crypto Assets in the United States," and actually is a fairly detailed, interesting 46-page PDF that kind of murmurs and looks at some of this data and where the kind of pros and cons are of the two big crypto voices in the room are against just climate and other energy objectives. And when you look at the adoption of the blockchain and cryptocurrency, and you see increased utilization of these technologies, maybe leveled off mining, but after a severe frenzy, it's very clear to me that even if people are dumping GPU cards left and right, the big major aspects that are running these things, they're going to keep sucking power, right? So unless the actual implementation of how you run blockchain changes, that's just a nature of the beast problem. And so when you compare those aspects to something like a CBDC, very different space, very different objectives, but you'd find it hard to imagine that the government would back a CBDC or equivalent type of federally managed.
What does that stand for?
Currency-backed digital currency.
Okay.
So basically things very similar to stablecoin, where they're they're being backed by and tracked against a well-known currency, in this case the US dollar, and you're not going to expect these wild swings and volatility like you may see with something like Bitcoin. And there's this whole kind of sub-analysis of, let's say, Bitcoin and these other we'll just say non-regulated, because you can argue all they want that they've been regulated, and sure, to some extent, but there's still so much that people are figuring out about how to regulate, that the regulations that are there are interesting. But let's just say those flopped and you were left with the federal government running a digital backed currency. That raises a whole host of privacy, ethics, and other challenges that you don't see in the same dimension and light of Bitcoin and Ethereum. So, I mean, we've talked about it on the show before. I think the blockchain is here to stay. I think the ways in which one will run blockchain is going to evolve. We're clearly seeing it from Ethereum. I have not done as much research into what Bitcoin's stance or take on this is in the long term, but I think you're going to continue to see growth of everyone saying, look at my version of the coin, look at my version of the coin, and then you're going to see a severe narrowing. It is hard to predict when that narrowing happens, but that's when it will go from fad to maturity curve. And what's left at the end of that curve is probably going to be about a dozen household names that become kind of the thing. And if you want to be doing digital currency, you pick from one of these 12s, and anything else is a hobby project on GitHub, quite frankly. And that will be a good point of maturity in cryptocurrency to analyze and study. Okay, we've hit this point of the growth curve of this technology. Where are we on energy consumption? Where are we on privacy issues? Where are we on security? I'm sure you're also going to see analysis, if it hasn't already, been done in some respects, around how will cryptocurrencies maintain relevance in the quantum age, right? Will they have quantum resistant algorithms and implementations that secure them from potential compromise of their very cryptographic nature on commodity computing being challenged by a quantum based system? Just one of the weird places we could find ourselves in 30 years, having those types of challenges. But I think it's fair to say that it is not an exaggeration to say things like the era of the credit card will be dead at some point. The era of holding cash and other things in your wallet will be dead. And it's going to raise some challenges, because you get to a point where what blockchain and things like Bitcoin have done really well, and some of their core tenets and core goals are, we've created a system that is decentralized. So there's no gatekeeper telling you who and how to transact at what rate. We've created something immutable, so we can go back in history and time and see exactly who did what for how much, when and where, forever. And we've done it in a way that's based in very solid mathematical principles. Like, it's not some back of napkin math. And there's going to be bugs and implementation problems, and what else is new? That's true of any type of point of sale or transaction based system. But there's a distinguished difference between what you get when you're doing digital currency in a blockchain based environment from a conventional point of sale. I think the big challenge actually that folks will have to deal with in this space, energy consumption, how it runs, etc. But for the users, think about that for a second. Think about what it means when the only way you get a good is by a digitally backed currency. And depending on which currencies survive and who gets to regulate and write the rules, that may determine what you get to buy. Whether you're an American citizen or whether you're somewhere abroad, it will provide a unbelievable level of visibility and scrutiny into finances that I don't think anyone anticipated they were getting into when all these cryptos started showing up. At first it was, oh, we've created the great new, black market, totally untraceable, thick of the night stuff. Tax evasion was rampant. Well, all that's the Wild West side of it, to be quite honest, is pretty much gone. And I think we still suck at regulating, and we don't really know how to regulate. And those discussions are still very green. But the writing on the wall to me is very clear. You will end up having some type of stable ecosystem to run the blockchain. There will be in a sense, when that winnowing of who gets to run the currencies happens, that will determine whether or not, in a way, we've gone back to a central model. Because sure, all the transactions are decentralized, but the people who are playing and writing the rules of the road are in a sense a centralized known commodity. And then it really just comes down to the fundamentals of, do you want to be in a position where, oh, I'm sorry, you've put too much gas in your car today. We're going to turn off your wallet for the next 12 hours. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people who listen that say, that's garbage, whatever. It's just, it's a Christian ramble. And maybe it is, I don't know. But it's certainly not inconceivable to see that we'll have created such a good system that is so immutable in what it does and how decentralized it is, that if there's a limited set of gatekeepers who write and play those rules, all of a sudden what was originally this decentralized way of moving money in this freeing way could become very restrictive again. And so then you have to kind of go back to, well, wait a second, what were the original goals of putting something like Bitcoin out there? And when you start to ask those questions, you really start to ask a much more fundamental question, which is the value of blockchain long-term have anything to do with currency in the financial systems, or does it serve a greater purpose or a different purpose? And these are fairly existential questions when you start talking about cryptocurrency that I don't think we're anywhere close to answering. And I think you're going to see a lot of episodes play out. When you look at people who have made big bucks off of it, little bucks off of it, whatever, that's all cute and good stuff. And quite honestly, good for you. You saw something that others didn't. But no one has provided a clear, rational argument to me about, at the end of the day, what do these currencies back their value in? How do you attest to the level of speculativeness about a given currency? How do you measure the worth of a currency? And you just start getting into market economics that I think would make most people's heads spin, and find yourself kind of in a wildly different place from the original joys and promises of what Bitcoin was supposed to be, which is, my God, it's 20K today, it'll be 30K tomorrow. Keep buying. And it was like, well, why are you doing that? Because it's going up. And, it's like, okay. And that's one aspect of it. Then you get the mining aspect of it, where by 2040, you're not going to make a buck for mining because there's going to be nothing left to mine. And yeah, again, you're already seeing that we're coming in a landing for the types of outcomes that could happen with kind of, all right, crypto V1, this is what we learned. And I think when people see the maturation curve in V2, we're going to be left with a lot of questions about, wait, what happened?
Yeah. I think that's a great summary. Where do you land on, when we think about Bitcoin and the amount of energy it takes to keep it running, to mine it and keep it running? And you just mentioned, it does have an end date. Like, this won't go on forever. That doesn't, there's still 20 years there or so. Any thoughts on just the sheer amount of energy it's taking to mine and maintain this thing?
Oh, it's ungodly stupid. I mean, it's not even just the amount to run it, it's the amount to manufacture it. I mean, can we count how much electricity was wasted creating all these AIB 3080, 3090 cards that went all over the world, only to say, oh shit, it's not worth anything anymore, let's start mass selling them on eBay, right? So there's a lot
or mine other coins with them, and that uses that, then it exponentially spreads that energy consumption across other projects, right?
There's a lot of hidden costs. I think one thing that would move the cost needle substantially is, sure, GPUs are efficient at doing this stuff in a sense, but if there are evolutions in chip design and manufacturing to the point where we design basically CPU GPU hybrids that are, and you can go get an Antminer and that's kind of what I'm talking about, but still an Antminer is, let me go put this brick that is just it's like you probably need a Tesla Powerwall to run that thing off the grid. Yeah, not exactly what I'm talking about. If you look at, you know, where we've come just with like ARM CPUs, right? More and more compute density with less and less power consumption. That's the type of stuff where I think you need to have innovation in that space to try and play the commodity game, and reverse usage. And yeah, places like Ethereum where they're looking at approaches that don't involve that kind of aspect at all may end up being way more efficient than anything you can optimize in the hardware and the mining space. So, but at the end of the day, like crypto is a cost. Like if you think about all the computers in the world and all the crypto they push every day, and like just think about your VPN. How much power consumption does your VPN run? No one asks questions like that, but how many like ungodly billions of VPN tunnels are running around the internet doing nothing but pushing AES 256 frames all day long? No one knows how to count that because it's not the sexy cryptocurrency thing. And like, I get it. It's probably not as much as an Ethereum stack, but you know, that's what people said about NAT translation on IPv4. And that's taken several power plants just to run the overhead of IPv4 versus IPv6. So like, we don't even think about stuff like that. You know, it's funny. I had a conversation with a coworker a few months ago, and we were talking about how expensive is Java to run. And I was like, that's an interesting question. What do you mean by that? And I'm not talking about like, you know, the fact that Oracle kind of acquired it and it split, and you know, none of that. Just like generally, like Java is this open source runtime and you can do all these great things. What do you mean? What's the cost of running Java? And it's like, well, wait a second. If my CPU cores are already always pegged at 100% because I'm doing, you know, the Java heap is coming by for garbage collection, and Java, mind you, is installed on over 3 billion devices in the world. And let's just say that each of them are about 30% less efficient than the same implementation in C, C++. Think about how much wasted compute and power that is around the world to say you're running a Java program. And I mean, that stuff sounds insane, but when you're like, well, what is the world power consumption required to run the internet? You can't even begin to really understand what are the draws of that without understanding like what do the software applications require, what do the algorithms require. And then, you know, like we're going to talk about PC building tonight, and one of the foundational questions I have is like, look at 2020 and 2021 architectures and compare them to the stuff coming out in 2022. Yeah, you're seeing faster and more density, but my God, look at the power consumption differences between the architectures. I want nothing to do with the current generation stuff. Like it's basically, we doubled the compute by quadrupling the power consumption. I'm like, no, it's supposed to go the other way, industry. It's supposed to be double the compute for half the power. And so we're kind of coming at a reckoning where folks are trying to get unnatural squeezes by juicing up the power requirements. I mean, just to run the NVIDIA 4090 cards that are coming out, you have to do ungodly numbers of things with your PSU adapters and connectors to run it. And most of the sample cards, when they plugged them in, the cable melted. The cable can handle the current running through it. So it's going to be kind of nasty. And I think, sure, for enthusiast stuff, that's one thing. But by and large, I do believe we have not hit the end curve yet with Moore's Law. I think if you look at what's going on with stuff like ARM, like that is the right area to be thinking. When you look at the Apple M1 chips, when you look at companies like Amazon designing their own server chips instead of using commodity that are curtailed, when you look at what Google is doing, where they're now talking about open source chip design, you know, let's in a sense democratize the ability to, you know, make and push your own CPUs and GPUs. Like to me, that's the kind of thinking that moves the needle on, okay, we can still have the growth of the internet and the growth of the devices, but we can do so in a way that's not this huge power vacuum to keep running something that is growing exponentially. So yeah, if your tech ecosystem is growing exponentially, you have to understand what the power requirements are to have that growth rate. And we don't have a handle on it.
There's a Cyber Frontiers episode right there.
Dun, dun, dun.
We were talking about that in the pre-show. I had asked the question, you know, should we just move Cyber Frontiers to Home Gadget Geeks? And Christian, you just did it. So that's pretty awesome. I think back to the Bitcoin question for a minute, and then we'll move on. I think this experiment that Ethereum is trying will give us some indication of. I'm getting a little bit of feedback from you, Christian. Are we coming through speakers from you? See if we can turn them down.
Try now.
Turn them down just a smidge for me.
Try now.
Okay. There we go. Hold on. Let me set your mic. 1 second. I can do that from here. Let me just bring that down a little bit. Okay. No, I'm still getting it a little bit. Let's see. Hold on. Let me keep talking. See if we can get that. So it'll be interesting to see on this. There we go. Perfect. It'll be interesting to see on this Ethereum experiment as they've moved from proof of work to proof of stake. Just what that means from, it's certainly folks who are mining on these cards before, it's created this now flood of these GPUs now coming in because Bitcoin hasn't always been, you couldn't mine on a GPU with Bitcoin for a long time. There could be some Ethereum derivatives you could have, right? So folks continue to do that as Ethereum moved off of that. Now it's proof of stake. It'd be interesting to see what they do, where that goes, how that happens, what the actual ramifications of it are. We saw, it wasn't long ago here in the United States where the money was centralized out of Washington, but in the frontier, cities had their own currencies, right? And it was a very similar kind of situation, not similar from the sense of power consumption, but similar from. I am getting some feedback from you. If you could turn your speakers down. I don't know why it just started. That's the weird.
Yeah, I don't either. They're as low as they go now.
That's fine. You can still hear me, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's perfect. That's fine. So, but I feel like we're a little bit in the same situation where this crypto is we're in the frontiers, the frontier land. And I don't know if any of these implementations are actually going to stick very long. You talked about quantum computing. If quantum messes this up, we may need to go into a whole new setup where we go, okay, now what does the blockchain look like processed on quantum computers? Like what does that crypto look like? And not the crypto coin, but the actual crypto part of it. As I say that, is that true? Is that the way we go on this? Do we have to start doing these again with longer solutions or more numbers? I don't know, Christian, what are your thoughts on that if we have to redo this?
They claim that the proof of stake approach is a higher security model than the proof of work, but that security is a cat and mouse game, right? So the crypto you're using today to do proof of stake is X, and the level of cryptographic entropy that will be required to be quantum resistant is Y, and you may need better CPUs, more efficient instruction sets to run that crypto correctly. And so this is not it's a point in time outlook, and I don't know that necessarily the approach or the algorithm of a blockchain changes overnight, but the computational approach to implementing new algorithms and using different types of crypto to run a blockchain is certainly something that could be constantly evolving.
Yeah. Ken and I, of course, have been working on Chia, which is a proof of space and time. These are hard drive, based, less power consumed in creating these. Still energy, right? Still people, still equipment, I don't think that method is taken off, quite like I think they were hoping it would. It's still out there, and they're still moving along. That coin, I don't know, $30-$40 at this point. That doesn't, there's really no correlation between the price of the coin and its usability in a space, right? That is just the coin value only gives incentives for miners to actually do the work required to validate the blockchain, right?
Yeah.
So, that's one of those things from there where you just kind of think, okay, we got to remember what we're doing with these. And it's become a tradable commodity of sort. But at the end of the day, we got to okay, what's the value of the coin, the reward that can be traded, and then what's the value of the blockchain as it is used. Today, I don't know if there is anything for the most part that's really taken off on the blockchain that really represents the true value of it or what it could be, right? I mean, can you name an initiative that you would say, oh yeah, this is the perfect use of the blockchain?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But in a sense, I kind of like that because it still tells me that we maybe haven't bottomed out on what is possible to do with blockchain, that
Yeah.
we're so
No.
focused on currency as the main
Right.
use case. We're not thinking about
Right.
some of the other use cases that could have that wide mainstream impact.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think we have a lot of work to do. It's super sexy on the trading because it's easy. Like
Mhm.
that part is easy. Like, oh yeah, it's worth this much. I buy it, I wait for it to go up, I sell it, or it goes down, I lose money. That's super easy. The actual implementation of what do we do with these blockchains now that we have them, that's much more difficult, right?
Yeah.
And the usages of them. So, well, I appreciate that opinion. On anything else you'd add, or anything else you wanna add to that part?
No, I just it's interesting. I listened to the last show and you can hear a difference as well in for lack of a better word, risk appetite. I think people who are really into crypto have different levels of risk that they're willing to take in investment, in utilization, in mining, in honoring their federal, state, local tax regulations, in how they use it in their life. And I think just the fact that there's such a wide spectrum still of how people are willing to engage in crypto um, was interesting to me. It left me with kind of some food for thought of like, hey, has all the growth and adoption in recent years, what type of people has that attracted, and have those
Mhm.
interests fallen into certain groups more so than others? Um, at the very beginning, you have all your hobbyists, I do whatever I want. It's a wild west. It's unregulated. Let's go do crazy stuff. We're not there today, but what does that mean for the types of users that these platforms are attracting? So like if
Mhm.
you were like, who is your average Ethereum user and how would you describe them? I don't know that I'd have a good answer.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's a question we need to answer in
Yeah.
some respect to understand where this is going.
Well, the trading markets are pretty mature. Like you think about the ways to get fiat on the blockchain, right? Ways to trade across different coins, ways to borrow, and I mean, they're just as sophisticated as a lot of our, our commodities or our stock markets. From a trading perspective, that area has gotten very, very sophisticated. But that's just trading the front end of the coin, right? That's just a statement of value that is like any other thing that can have value associated with it. But if you if you said, okay, what are we actually doing with these things? People would be like, I don't know. I can't. I mean, I asked you. You can't name one project, right? You're like, so there is a lot of maturity in that trading space, and
They're
it
buying
is
NFTs. I that was apparently
uh,
a trigger on the last show, but that's what
and
they're
yeah,
doing. They're
well,
buying
and
NFTs.
yeah, NFTs. Edward is not a big fan of the direction that NFTs have gone, because they're silly, right? I mean, and until we actually get things till we actually get things of real value to secure with the blockchain, none of that stuff really matters, So it's certainly from that standpoint, I still find it very, very interesting, and the reason I continue to talk about it on this show is because I think Gadget Geeks, it's going to play into the future world of everything we do in some form or fashion. I don't know where it'll land. I think somebody was asking. I think Ken was asking a little bit earlier about a time frame. You had kind of mentioned, you were talking about this convergence where, or I'm going to call it a culling, where 99% of these junk blockchains just disappear. They don't have to, but there's no incentive anymore to keep the computers turned on that run these things, right?
I think at a minimum it takes 8 years for that flush to occur, and it could take over a decade.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go. Maybe another decade in that. So by the way, that's not that's Christian's opinion.
Yep. This is not financial advice.
Yeah, do not buy or trade or sell or say we told you. But it is John. So John mentions, he says every time you purchase something with crypto, it's a taxable event, right? That's a big problem.
Now, imagine if you're using a CBDC and the CBDC is automatically reporting your taxable events to the IRS, and you're not paying attention and you end up owing. Or better yet, they're just taking it from your wallet, just like they take when they withhold from your paycheck, right? There's no more of this concept of tax fraud, because the only way you can purchase something is to use a CBDC. And when you record that transaction, all the taxes are moving to the right place, just magically, fairy dust into the treasury. And people are like, no. And it's like, okay, well then what else is the point of having a CBDC? Tightly regulated, stability, no volatility. And yeah, we can write the playbook to meet and support financial markets in a way that we haven't been able to do before.
Yeah.
It's a compelling direction we could be heading in. And I don't know that your average crypto enthusiast, they would run like 180 degrees in the opposite direction of that narrative. But yet that to me seems like a fairly probable outcome in this experiment that we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's the other side of the equation. I think a lot of folks came to crypto for privacy, and the ugly truth may be, I'm not saying it's gonna be, the ugly truth may be it actually may be an anti-privacy tool in the future, right?
When you use crypto, which gives you the property of immutability and in a way non-repudiation of what happened, all you have to do is for someone to come and regulate and take that anonymous identifier and say, yep, that anonymous identifier is Bob. Hey, you want to know what else has been an anonymous identifier in the government for, I don't know, 90 years now? Your social security number, which has been used and abused so many different ways to Sunday, is probably never supposed to be a generic, unique identifier for U.S. citizens. It started as this very specific benefit during the Great Depression and Recovery era, and now it's like this prevalent identifier that thou shall must have to use and transact and do business. Guess what? Replace that number with your crypto wallet ID, and all of a sudden use the system as is with a CBDC, and yeah, this whole privacy argument goes to dust.
Yeah. We've lots of privacy conversations back on old versions of Cyber Frontiers. So if you want more of that, and you want to go back and listen to some of those, some pretty good stuff. Well, I think a long conversation and a good conversation around this, good opportunity to dialogue a little bit about it. And I think there are as many opinions about it as there are people. Yep. And so that's the great news. You formulate what you want to think about it, and you do the things. Eric, thanks for your email on it. And Eric sent me a bunch of resources on it as well. And, if you come at it from a pure environmental standpoint, you got to hate it. You got to. It's an environmental disaster, right? You have to. But Christian, to your point, though, how much, if we looked at the energy consumption of that, and then you think about the energy consumption of other things that we do for entertainment purposes or for other things, and you got to kind of think it's probably not the only thing out there that has no necessary value, but is still consuming, that we still consume a lot of power for.
Yeah.
In the top 3 of those are probably all on the internet. So that's one of those. I think about tonight. It's a Thursday night football game only being shown on Amazon Prime. And so you've got to go, you can't get it over the air. So I have to go, if I'm going to, and it's streaming, and think of all the streaming servers that are there to stream those things. And think of, I have to have my computer turned on to be able to watch this. the TV I use. I just bought this brand new TV that we use for the deck, and the power consumption on that thing, the yellow sticker, if I run that TV, it's like $20 a year if I leave that on 5 hours. But if I use my computer to do that, which I'm more likely to, just to be 100% honest, well, that consumption is much higher, right?
Yeah.
So just to watch a football game, like, and by the way, that same thing's true of Monday Night Football. That's only on ESPN. That I might watch on cable, but chances are I'm watching it on my ESPN Plus app. Thanks Disney for that. And so, like, how much football over the weekend in the United States and the world, or football in the other football we call soccer, is being consumed online in streaming? I think you were alluding to that, maybe another unsavory conversation that goes on as well. How much power is consumed in keeping all that infrastructure up and running? That'd be interesting. You ever seen a power figure on the internet? Like, what does it take to run the internet? Have you ever seen
I've seen them in the
know.
past. It's been a while since I've actually looked and restudied the topic, but they're out there.
Yeah, just wondering. I was not trying to put you on the spot. Just kind of wondering. Like, and to John's point, it's part of the human condition, right? To do these kinds of things. And we're not just going to live in a cave. Well, that's all true. It's just getting perspective on, like, I think to your point, sometimes these things get called out and you're kind of like, well, actually, there's some other things that just kind of seem to happen that we don't necessarily take into consideration. Okay. So Eric, thanks for emailing that. Interesting conversation. Christian, I have in my hands here a Ryzen 5 5600X. This is the beginning of the build. Got a great deal on it, $165, 65 watts on these. I think is the peak. Thought it was a great price for performance. I could be wrong on that wattage. I thought it was 65. Could be 105. I'll have to look that up as we're chatting, but that's peak. And so for me, that AMD Gen 4, right, gave me the right power for performance and cost for what I was looking for. I could have spent more, but for what I'm doing. By the way, I've had the same conversation in my head about building this computer and thinking, what am I going to do with this thing? That's going to, like, when do I really need it? Well, okay, I have some aging computers that, I should probably replace, right? There's some things, like I tried to run Microsoft Flight Simulator. I wanted to do some entertainment with that. Couldn't run it on my current Windows box. The 4770, I think, or 4740, 4700. It's a 3rd gen i7. Won't run it at this point. Struggles. And I don't have a GPU in there. So I was like, okay, it's probably time to upgrade. But I kind of started thinking, like, I could throw a lot of power at this thing, but do I need to? Do I need an i9, or do I need a Ryzen 9? You alluded to this just a second ago, the new architectures, right? So we have both new GPUs and CPUs coming out. This is kind of last month's
great
CPU,
stuff. It's
so
great stuff.
Why do you say that?
So first off, when you think about it, the 5600X MSRP'd around $300 when it first hit the market. And so you've basically bought 1 to 2 year old technology at 50% off. But you ask yourself some pretty fundamental questions, like, what is it that you do today that you can't do on a Gen 3, but you can do on a Zen 4? Nothing I can think of. There's really, unless you're looking for super niche benchmark performance on the hottest game title of the day, your average compute use case, you're just not going to see your dollar get much value for going between a Zen 3 and a Zen 4 architecture. And Zen 3 was like a big, big leap for AMD. I mean, they crushed it. There's no other way to say it. Like, one of the most successful consumer chips of the last decade easily. And they wiped the floor with Intel on it. And so yeah, it's not to say Zen 4 isn't cool or isn't the next thing or can't do, more compute, but you're going to pay top dollar, and you're going to have you're going to move to the new socket design, and your new CPU, if you're trying to bring coolers or other stuff over with that new socket design, may not be fully compatible. They tried to make it compatible, but then, well, they made the cooler brackets compatible. They screwed up the retainer clip on the motherboard, so like it's not as easy or as obvious as it sounds in some cases, depending on what type of aftermarket cooler you're using. So when you're just saying I'm looking for an all-around great chip without burning cash into the ground, it's really hard to point to something that's going to outdo a 56 or a 5800 in terms of price per dollar for 99.9% of your modern day generation computing. And it's not to say it's just a thing to browse the web with. That's going to be able to handle VR. It's going to be able to handle most game titles. You're going to be able to run VMs on it. I mean, it's not a chip to sneeze at. So I think it's a great choice, a great design, and no one has really articulated for the average consumer why they should spend the money to go to the Gen 4 stuff right now.
Mm-hmm. And I misspoke. Zen 3 is the version on that. I think I call it a 4, but it is the AMD socket AM4 architecture. Yep. I'm still trying to get the exact wattage on that, but 6 cores, 12 processing threads, comes with a cooler in there. Well, good.
65 watt TDP for
65. That's what I thought it was. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. So good. Like you've told me, and Bob and Ryan kind of steered me in this direction a couple weeks ago when we had them on. Bob and Ryan are from thinkcomputers.org. And I could have done Ryan had said I could have done the 5800 X3D, which would have given me a little bit more power, especially when it came to gaming. Another probably double in price for that. So, and right now, actually, you can get this Ryzen 5 5600X for $150 right now in most places. So it's
amazing, amazing stuff.
Yeah, and a really good price point for that. I chose not to. I thought, well, I think I'll go, because again, the thought was, do I really need to push it that hard for some of the compute? I'm going to probably create 4 VMs on it, just to be honest. We'll talk about memory here in a second. I will probably run some games on it, which the GPU will matter. We'll talk about that here in a second. And I think for what I'm doing, that's a good price point. Christian, you and I in our Discord group at theaverageguy.tv/Discord, if you want to join this conversation, in our hardware group, I've been throwing in some of these questions. And Christian, so now the next logical conclusion, I don't have a board for this. I can't run it off my tongue. That won't work that way. It won't make me smarter. So I got to get a board for it. And I was looking at some B550s, which are the cheaper boards. The X570s are going to give me a little bit more with some additional M.2 slots in there, as well as maybe a few other things in it. Any thoughts? I want to hear your thoughts again as I'm thinking about these boards. By the way, price comparison, probably around $200 for a pretty decent 550, $300 to $400 for the X570 in that space. Just from a price comparison standpoint, I could probably find some 570s that are a little bit cheaper. I was looking for Wi-Fi 6 in it, because knowing that's going to be the next thing. A lot of these are coming with 2.5 gig Ethernet, but I was kind of hoping not, like, that's one of those things. I think 6 is the next thing on Wi-Fi that will help with doing wireless VR headsets in the future, from what I understand. So those are some things I was looking at when I was looking at some of these boards. Your thoughts on a 550 versus a 570?
Yeah, in general, it really comes down to how much you care about PCI 4 and how much you care about thermals and overclock. So Certainly, if you want to do any type of chip setting, overclock tweak, that kind of thing, you're going to have a better VRM and thermal design on the 570 from the 550. But for price for dollar, you seem to do much better on the peripherals with the 550 boards than the 570 boards. So in order to get both the peripherals and the better chipset and PCI 4 support, you're jumping to about 2x the price of getting good peripherals with probably not great overclock. So the first thing you kind of have to decide is, am I going to put a chip in here that I want to tweak the hell out of, or do I just want to run the stock clock thing? I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to run it stock and be happy with it. And if that's your answer, then you're probably fine with the B550, and it's more about what's the best peripheral spectrum you'll get on the B550. I think the other question to look at is for the 550 boards, typically you'll get one PCIe 4 bus lane, and I think the other ones are typically all 3 lanes. So if the GPU is the only thing you need to put on that board, and you're going to buy a PCIe 4 graphics card, got to make sure that's the thing it goes in. And if you have other peripheries that you care about on other slots, just know that you're going to have a much more limited PCIe bus, and that's probably okay for a lot of other commodity cards. But to me, it's a little bit of a shame to buy a 30, whatever your RTX 3 series or 4 series of choices. I really don't recommend a 4 series card with these boards or in life in general right now. But let's say your 3 series card of choice, which are cheaper than just unbelievably cheap compared to where they started, right? The fact I can get a 3090 Ti for what the MSRP of what original 3080 was 2 years ago is insane. But anyway, you're going to want to make sure that lives and runs on a PCI 4 slot.
Yeah, and I'm going to have a single video card in there, so a single GPU, and I don't at this point don't plan to run. Kind of thinking about my other boxes. I do have an LSI card controller for some, because I run a bunch of hard drives for some of the mining that I do. Not necessarily needing PCI 4 for that. I would. What else would I need a second PCI 4 slot for?
Some folks in older boards would want to run their M2s or their SSDs mounted to their PCIe slot, but if you have an M2 native on the motherboard, that's kind of like a mid-generational hack that people would do to get more juice out of their boards without doing a whole new build. That's one consideration. Some folks get fancy with wanting USB-C and FireWire and some of the other non-standard peripheral ports that are not going to come as robust on the back end of the motherboard as peripherals. And other than that, honestly, not a whole lot. In a way, PCIe for the consumer has really become about putting your graphics card in. A lot of the other stuff is very niche, and you don't need the high-end data rates to run that niche hardware.
The 550, as we talked about this both in the Discord group and a couple weeks ago with Bob and Ryan, on a 550, I'm going to get 2 M.2. One's going to be a Gen 4. These are hard drive gens right now. So one's going to be a Gen 4. The other's going to be a Gen 3. So significantly faster. I probably will end up only putting one M.2 drive on there to begin with. I keep a lot of the storage stuff that I need either in the cloud or locally, but it's not going to be on that box. So I'm not going to necessarily, I don't think I would necessarily benefit. I do feel a little FOMO of, Christian, to be honest, on the 570s. Generally, you're going to get 4 Gen 4 M.2s.
Yeah.
And when you think about future proofing it, you kind of go, well, yeah, not doing that today, but man, there could be a situation in the future where I might want to
imagine a RAID 1 or a RAID 5 of those M.2 drives, and if one goes bad, you just swap out the flash and keep on going.
Yeah, and I don't know why I would do that today. I
literally
have
crazy.
No good
especially
reason.
If you're doing general commodity backup, it's overkill.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but that's basically the big trade-off you make between 550 and 570. How much Gen 4 stuff are you putting in that box? And
Right.
that kind of determines which chipset you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Both support they both support 128 gig of RAM. So
Yeah.
that's the max on these. You talked about thermals, and so we think about, I think this 570s generally come with better thermals. They've thought about it more. You've got more of that air being directed in places to keep things cool, in some of those pieces. And so I've got to kind of come down. It kind of really comes down to, in a lot of ways, like, do I want four M.2s, or is two okay? Can I get away with two on that? Because everything else I can, well, I'm gonna just, well, I say this today. I'm gonna use that one PCI 4 slot, and that's it, because I'm gonna have one GPU. Again, future proofing. We're talking about the difference. Let's just double this thing. So generally, $200 for a pretty good 550 board, $400 for a pretty good 570 board, right?
Yeah,
You
and
can find them differently, but let's just say that's the truth.
yeah, I mean, and the exceptions to those rules will generally be around which one you try to dial an index on, right? So a really good example in the Discord chat was you can get an entry level X570 board, the ASUS TUF, which is actually a pretty good board for $200. So you'll get the higher end chipset without paying double, but you're not going to get Wi-Fi 6E, you're going to get Wi-Fi 5. So if you care about a peripheral like being on 6th gen Wi-Fi, that's not a board you would pick.
But I could replace that 5. Looking at that chip, if that chip is not soldered to the board,
yeah,
they're selling 6E boards that, in theory, you pull the 5 off, put the 6 in, right?
Or you go buy a big Wi-Fi 6E PCIe card and jam it in there and say, look how great that looks in my build, guys.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah. As I was doing some research on this for tonight, I came across those 6 cards that are swappable on a motherboard. I didn't do much research as I dug into that. Uncle Mars says, night, I got to go price some i9 CPU. So Uncle Marv, sorry if we've influenced you to go buy stuff. So it was one of those kinds of things. I thought, okay, maybe the 6 isn't as important now. I haven't really bought the VR stuff yet. The goal will be to put this box together and then kind of come at it from a VR perspective. I think there's also going to be a bunch of VR announcements coming up at CES here at the beginning of the year, and I may want to wait kind of for those things to happen from a VR perspective before I think about what kind of headset I'm going to plug into this thing. So, Christian, I think I initially had thought drop dead 6E. It just makes sense. Well, if I could get a 570 board now and know I could swap out that, I don't have that need today. Listen, those 6E cards are like $25. So it's not like it's a gigantic upgrade. I could get into the board that I want now, as you mentioned, like that ASUS board, and then begin. And that would guarantee I got, because I'm not going to be able to upgrade the PCI 3 to PCI 4. Not going to be able to make that upgrade. It's going to always be PCI 3. I'm not going to necessarily be able to add M.2 slots to the board. Yeah, I could buy a card, put it in that PCI 3 slot, and then put some M.2s in it. But the ones on the board probably would run better, faster, look a little bit better. So maybe it does make sense to look through that board perspective and say, okay, one, can I swap the Wi-Fi card on there when time comes? Will that work?
Yeah, and I'll pull this link up real quick, but they have this version of the TUF Pro board is a Wi-Fi 6 board for 220, which is a little bit above that 200 pivot point, but that puts you in the X570 chipset range and with a Wi-Fi 6 card from day one. That's not a bad deal.
I don't think I got the right. Is this, you said this MSI?
I put it in the StreamYard chat.
Oh, in StreamYard.
Sorry.
No, I see it there. I must have copied or pasted the wrong thing. So let's try it again. Sorry
there you
about
go.
That's the one. Okay. So ASUS TUF Gaming X570-PRO, Wi-Fi 6, AMD 4, Zen 3, right? So supports everything we want. It's going to have the both these PCI are going to be 4.0, right?
Yep.
And as we look through
you're getting Wi-Fi 6 and you're getting the 2.5 gig LAN port, which is actually pretty good value at that price point.
Yeah,
It's rare to see all those lumped in at
right,
that price point.
right. Yeah. What was your beef on MSI? I know you weren't a big fan of that, but what was your
mostly quality, especially in the overclocking community. The high end boards is typically how I measure how well the AIBs are doing with these chipsets, and it was just clear that MSI wasn't as competitive with the ASUS brand. They're okay, but it's funny. It's like I place a lot more trust in ASUS when it comes to motherboards, but I place a lot less trust in them in their laptops. So like it's like I they weigh in certain categories depending on what you're looking for, and I think that ASUS has done a really marvelous job with overall board quality with the Zen 3 architecture. And I run the Dark Hero board, which was one of the top selling successful boards for this generation of hardware, and it's solid stuff. I mean, I'm tickled pink with how well they did with it. So I give a lot of credence to ASUS, both for their motherboards and for the NVIDIA GPU series they did. I mean, they just did a great job with this cycle of hardware. So
one hold on, we got another comment here. So Justin says I fully concur with your comments about ASUS GPUs. Good as well. That board just has 2 Gen 4, not 4 on it. But again,
but at least it's not a 4 and a 3. It's 2
right,
4s.
Correct. Yeah, correct. To the best of my knowledge, just looking at the featuring dual M.2 slots NVMe. Well, it says dual M.2 slots NVMe SSD. I'll have to dig in a little bit and see what those, just to see but this is definitely like you've in it. We got it in that 220 price range, which I think is a good value. I am trying to kind of keep the value on this thing. Okay, so I like this board. I told you at some point I may purchase right now, but I'm going to do a little bit of, and I've done that. Uyghurs talked me into buying things right away. This is a little more complicated, so I want to look into it a little bit just before I do it.
There's no rush.
Christian, 128 gig versus 64. I'm going to run some VMs on this thing. Right now it's double. It's 200 for 64. It's 400 for 128. Thoughts on, right? And I always hate this. Like, well, yeah, you could do 64 now and then buy another 64, but then they're not matched kind of deal, right? I don't know. Thoughts on that?
Personally, for the desktop, I think 64 is the way to go. I built 64 in my Zen 3 box, and I run VMs and other stuff, and I've been very happy with it. Even my steady state of having the chaos of applications open, no VMs, just like all my productivity, all my other stuff, I'm using about 24 gigabytes committed on a given day. So that still leaves well over 40 gigabytes to run whatever VMs you want. Even if you're running 8 VMs, if you each give them 4 gigs of RAM, you're fine. So you really have to be running a little bit of a VM farm to justify the 128 in my mind. For servers, different story, right? Like I'm building server blades at Maple Grove that are 256 gigs of RAM density because guess what? Their job is to run VMs. But for the desktop, I think 64 is the right number. I think these days 32 is the minimum you would want. I think 64 is a nice middle ground. You can go up to 128, but you're gonna feel like you did this great thing, but it's not, in my opinion, gonna impact your productivity.
Yeah. Well, if I had 3 VMs running, 16 gig each, I like to throw about 16 gig at Windows, even though 8 You could do it with 8. 12 is a little bit better. Anything I'm running with 16 just seems to run better on the Windows side. So if I had 3 Windows VMs, all of a sudden I'm at 48. I got 16 left for and I don't do dynamic. I do static. So I take it all when we go in there, when those VMs are set up.
Yeah.
Though, Oracle just released VM. What's the name of Oracle's VM software? VirtualBox. There we go. And I've been using that on another box to emulate Home Assistant, which is a really easy way to run Home Assistant, by the way, on a VirtualBox. It runs great. It may run a little bit better than VM than Hyper-V, so that I may get some economies there. Okay. Well, I've got some things to think about. John was asking, what's the total cost of the build you're looking at right now? John, I'm actually not thinking of it that way. I'm thinking about what's the best value for what I can get right now and a price point that I can sleep with. Like I could, at night, I go to bed going, yeah, like when I bought the 5600X, I got it. What Christian said too. I got a great deal and I bought the right one, right? For what I'm trying to do. So I'm not coming at this from a total cost standpoint or even a budget standpoint. I'm going to hold myself to a fairly reasonable, I could go spend 5,000 on this if I was going to do that, I just would have bought the best parts already and then we'd have been done and it wouldn't have been fun to talk about it. But here, Christian, I was getting ready to spend $200 on a motherboard and he's like, hey, wait a minute, for $20 more, I think you can get what you're looking for. Well, I feel a little bit better about that board than I felt about now. Kind of like, okay, based on what I want to do and what I think the future is, Christian, I'll probably hold on to this PC for 6, maybe 8 years, right?
Always go for 10. Flamethrowers has crossed its 10-year anniversary. She's doing beautifully. She still runs a AMD FX 8350 CPU.
Yeah.
And this box, which is the 5950 box on the Dark Hero with the 3080, water cooled and 64 gigs of RAM with a Western Digital Black, is on it's past its 1-year mark. And I'm like, my God, if this thing doesn't last 15 years, I've done something very wrong.
Yeah. Well, my original build from, I think it's 8 now, the 4770, I think is what it is, and I've bumped that thing up to 64. I think it's 64. It's the max on that thing. Could be 32. I have to take a look at it again. But I've pushed that as far as I can go. It's still a great PC. It's just now I'm starting to see some things that are like, okay, you can't run that on that. Now I could put a GPU in it, but would I really want to buy a new GPU and put it in that system? Maybe, but maybe not. John says, I get that, but the answer is usually 3K. No matter what year it is. And that may be true. I may end up spending $3,000 on this. I've always found computers that I want for 3,000. We may get to that point. I doubt it. I don't think I'm going to go that high. It just kind of depends on where, like Christian, to your point, I really like just putting 128 in there and be done. All the computers that I have right now, I've had to go back and buy memory for them again. And I'm kind of like, get matched pairs. Like,
that's a good thing to know, though, in your case. Like, if you've had that history, then if you think you're going to expand, like maybe I don't want to run 3 VMs, I want to run 6 VMs, then in your case it may make sense.
And I don't feel like the extra 200 is throwing money at nothing, because there's been a history of me running more VMs than less for some of the things I'm doing in a lot of the crypto space that I've been in so far. Man, the VMs have been super helpful. And so it's like, okay, I may not, but chances are, based on history, I may. Let's quick, as we think about wrapping this thing up, because we're already way into it, but GPUs, we already know the 4040 series. It's a little messy right now, and I'm definitely not paying a premium. Been looking at the 360s. I spent time with Bob and Ryan just last night on thinkcomputers.org. I was in their chat room. Super helpful, both the chat room and them helping me live. I think they've got me convinced to go 3060 Ti. Like, I think that's we're what, $600 maybe, I think $500 for a TI, somewhere in there, maybe less. They've also convinced me to hold off right now till all this NVIDIA nonsense comes out that they're doing, right? But Christian, what do you think? 3060 Ti for, again, VR, some gaming. Not a huge gamer, but I do want to do some gaming on it, or have the ability to do it. That seems like a sweet spot, don't you think?
Yeah, the cards have never been cheaper, and so the value of staying in the 3rd gen to me is a no-brainer. And it's just a question of what types of games at what level of excitement you think you're going to be dealing with. One of the big questions that I think people forget to ask about is they ask themselves a lot of questions about the card, but they don't ask themselves a lot of questions about the monitor. So if you're running a 120 hertz monitor, probably doesn't matter the difference between like a 3060 Ti and a 3070. You're not going to see it anyway. So that to me is a big thing. Like, for example, I'm in the same boat. Like, I have a 3080, but I have a 60 hertz monitor. What good does that do me? Absolutely nothing. I'm not going to get all of the G Sync and the 144 hertz and whatnot. But I built it knowing at some point when I'm sick of this 38-inch monitor, I'm going to go get the thing that specs and matches the card. And I'm fine with that because my 99% use case is reading text. It's not gaming.
Right.
I occasionally game, but it's not my thing. So I think a 3060 Ti is a fine option. I would look though at the frame rates for, like, pick your top 3 VR games that you would envision yourself playing, and then go look at the benchmarks between the 3060 Ti and the 3070. And if you see, yeah, these titles run fine on either card and the numbers aren't really that big apart, I would feel pretty confident in your buy for the 3060 Ti. If you look at those and, oh, well, there's some pretty substantial number differences here for the VR use case, and I might want to do something more with my monitor in a few years, that's maybe the trigger to think about a step up to a 3070.
Okay. The 3060 Ti 8 gig that I'm showing right now, 450.
I'm not
Just
sure I
from-
trust Zotac on this, by the way, but
Okay. No, that's good to hear. You know, the other question I'd kind of asked Bob and Ryan last night was, you know, I could go with just a 3060 and get 12 gig of RAM. And most of the 3060 Ti's now are 8 or 10. And you know, these are even a little bit cheaper, and some of the thought was, from a pure gaming perspective, getting the Ti is more valuable than getting the more RAM. Do you have any thoughts on that?
you know, this is not a bad card for the market for the average case. I think of the 3060 more in line with what Intel's trying to do with their new cards, so that's like a good comparison point. I think that Ti does give you a little bit of an edge. I would go with something a little bit more on brand than Zotac, only because Zotac has improved their quality, so you know, I can't say I've had bad stories with Zotac, but they haven't really earned my consumer trusts on that.
Sure.
I would jump at the chance to get some. If it was $10 more to go with ASUS, I'd
Okay.
every single time I'd hit that
Yeah.
button.
Yeah.
The other, I'm gonna get a bunch of stares, and how dare you? But the other interesting angle about this to throw in your kind of thought is, have you thought about an AMD GPU? And the only reason I say that is because, yeah, no one would argue a 3090 head to head with a 6900 XT isn't a fair fight. However, some of those RT cards are going to be very price competitive and perform better than your 3060, 3070s. So, like, if you look at this is a great example of this. Like, yeah, it's a next step up in price range, but even if you go down to like the 6750 XT, you're looking at a card that's priced about the same as the 3060 Ti. And I'm going and looking back at benches, but I bet you probably would bench better on that card.
Yeah, even so, and the card we were looking at was a 6900. Here's an RX 68 with 16 gig of RAM, 529. So the one before it was over 600. And then and Bob and Ryan, as I was chatting with them a little bit, were kind of encouraging me to stay mostly on the NVIDIA side.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's not unwise guidance. Actually,
yeah,
I was just looking. So 3060 Ti does bench about 17% better on average than the 6750. So that answers that question.
yeah. That to
So
me, the 3060 Ti feels like this 5600X
mhm,
from a
mhm,
value, a dollar value to what I'm getting based on my use case. Like, not going to do hardcore gaming. I'm probably going to put a 60, a monitor that comes at 60 hertz, probably not 120. I'm probably going to go for an ultra wide. And so I'm primarily going to think about this from a VR standpoint, which is a little bit different, right? When you think about your monitor, but this would give me an opportunity to upgrade and get another curved monitor down here so that I've got the Mac on one. This is a 1440, works perfectly for what I'm doing off the Mac. The Mac could probably drive a little bit more on that, but I don't need it. I'm not gaming on the Mac. I'm podcasting on the Mac. This has been perfect for what it is. I think about this, okay, now I've got a 3060 Ti. What could I push with that? And what would be the right monitor that would complement that card that's also value, right? I'd have that same kind of conversation. We haven't picked a card yet, so I can't pick a monitor. But at some point, maybe I'll have you back on. And
yeah,
we'll pick a monitor. I don't need it right away. The way I'm going to run the computer, I can still run it off the monitors that I have here that are just fine because they're just monitors, right? I don't
yeah,
game on them at the moment. Eventually, we would get into that, and I might want to upgrade, put the monitor on that. It also gives me the opportunity as I get into this, if I need to ditch the 3060, I got it at a pretty good price point. I could probably drop it, sell it for a little bit less and upgrade if I need to. I don't think I would though, just to be honest. So just some thoughts. Okay, that helps me. That gets me a little bit closer to this. I'm going to take a hard look at this ASUS board that you've got on there, and that may be making its way. I may be helping pay your salary on its way. Although the margins just got to be razor thin on these things. So we'll be getting that. I'll be thinking through that, and then really the next question I need to answer is memory. What do I want to do with? Because I'm waiting. Their advice is, even though I've made a decision on a 3060 Ti, say that's where I land tonight. I'm pretty confident with that. Wait, see what happens. See how these NVIDIA shenanigans shake out. I still may be able to get that 3060 Ti just a little bit cheaper, maybe especially as we're thinking about Black Friday. So that's, if you're listening to this and you're in that same boat, which is why I'm sharing this with you. Maybe you're thinking about this too. Christian, I'm so glad I waited. I wanted to build during the pandemic, and like that was just nutsoville. Like that was
yeah,
crazy. And I feel like now's the time. Feel like now we're in that sweet spot. Who knows what's going to go on next year with the economy and things and supply chain and whatever. It's good now and prices are dropping. I think I need to take advantage of this window and jump in and get some things done and get this built. So I think my thought is get a board, get the board, get the memory, drop it in a case. I've already got the power supply for it, and get some things up and running. I guess I'll need to get an M.2 drive of some sort. That's pretty easy. I think that's a
highly
pretty
recommend the Western Digital Black.
okay. Okay.
Um,
And a terabyte, you
highly
think,
recommended.
or a terabyte or two?
I go with 2 just because, you know me, data just follows me, but, if again, it
Yeah,
depends on
yeah.
if you're offloading stuff to servers and cloud a lot, you can get away with the 1, but, I've had nothing but fantastic results with
Okay.
the SN850, and it integrates with, some of the higher end, GPU math these days, so
Okay.
when these cards first came out, they were like $400. You can now get the 2 terabyte 850 black for like $220. So like
Okay.
half the price, just like you're saying, about half the price from what it launched at. It is a great high quality M2. That thing just rips.
Yeah.
One of the most impressive M2s I've owned.
I subscribe to Western Digital's deals list, and certainly they have been running some pretty good deals as of late. And I imagine as we get closer to, again, the universe is converging at this point, and it's like Black Friday's coming up, holidays are coming up, impending recession is coming up. Like, you're kind of like, well, okay, this may be the time to kind of pull the trigger. And I've been saving my pennies so that I could do a build like this. I also, John, just kind of back to your point about price. I just didn't want to get locked in. I knew I wasn't going to go too crazy with it because I'm just not built that way. But I also didn't want to get locked into a budget, make a bad decision that I'd regret about. Oh, I should have spent. I shouldn't have cheaped out and went with the AMD or I mean the Intel Arc. Oh, it's first gen, but it was cheap, or I go the AMD route, or I overspend on something. I'm trying to figure out those right places to do it. I would feel good about 128, like 128 gig of RAM in there. Even at $400, that would make me. I'd rather spend that money there and then maybe slim down my case because I just don't like the case. I just don't care about. People aren't going to look at my case, so none of the RGB stuff's going to be turned on. Like I'm turning everything off. This thing is not going to glow in the dark, right? So those are some of the things with it. So no, John, and I totally get where you're going. He says I wasn't meaning establish a budget. I was meaning what you end up costing for the configuration that you want. I'll let you know when I'm done. I still haven't made a final decision on a lot of the parts. We're having these conversations live and kind of build it as we go to see where we're at. I feel good about the first thing, and Christian, I'll send you a note if I pick up the board. I might even that may even happen after the show tonight. So thanks for all the advice. Anything I'm missing on that build? Anything else we didn't talk about that you'd give me advice on?
Coolers. I guess 5600 comes with the AMD cooler. That's right.
It's got a stock. Ryan over at thinkcomputers.org. He's got a bunch of stock, or he's got a bunch of coolers that he's reviewed that he's going to send one over to me to use. It's a liquid cool. So it's an all-in-one kind of liquid cool unit. So we're going to I'll probably start with this. I think this one came with it. And yeah, it's a big ass box. It better have a fan in there. But he's going to send me one too that he likes, that he's got in his boneyard, so to speak, to use as a cooler. So do I need to worry about cooling the hard drive, the M.2 drive?
I don't worry about it.
Is that a thing?
It's been fine.
Okay. Yeah.
They have the I mean, my board has the heat sink that you stick on top of it to match the board, and I think it comes with one in the box too, but I haven't had to do anything special.
Yeah. And I think that board's got active cooling on the board itself to cool the chipset on the board, which is kind of cool. So that'll be kind of fun to see. Well, cool. Well, we'll continue to if you want to join us in the Discord group, theaverageguy.tv/Discord, you can jump in there. It's the nicest group of guys on the planet. There's never any crazy conversations in there. It's just all super helpful, and I think everybody's just trying to help people get to a natural conclusion. Christian, thanks for jumping in and filling us in on your thoughts on crypto, as well as getting me the right getting me to the right sport. I'm not going to lie. I'll probably take that link. Did we throw that link for that ASUS board in the Discord chat? Maybe I'll throw it in there later tonight and let them grind on that for a day. Yeah, why don't you do that? Maybe we'll grind on that for a day or so, because I don't think it's going to go up at this point. But and I don't need it tomorrow, so we can maybe grind on it through the weekend and go from there. Well, a couple of reminders while Christian's doing that. A couple of reminders on the way out. Don't forget, if you want to join us, if you find value in the podcast and you want to give back on that value, you can do it through Patreon, theaverageguy.tv/Patreon. We'll get you there. Big thanks for that. Join the Discord group, theaverageguy.tv/Discord. If you want to leave a message, Eric, you're always so good. Neil as well, about sending me emails, jim@theaverageguy.tv. You can leave a message. Go to homegadgetgeeks.com. There's a microphone in the bottom right-hand corner. Leave a message. Just email me after you leave the message, because I don't check that email very often for the voicemail. So I can go grab that and we can play it here on the show. Eric, thanks for your note this week. As you see it influence the show, if you'd like to do that as well. And then don't forget the AverageGuy.tv platform, both web and media hosting, powered by Maple Grove Partners. We talked about them in the beginning of the show. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. And it's that guy over there. Does a bang-up job of it. For more information, visit maplegrovepartners.com. We are back next Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. I think Jay's joining us again, and his co-host from his show will be with us. And we're going to have a good time together. So it'll be a very, very different show next week, but it will be fun. Fola is going to join us. Marv V joins us. That's a new Marv, but Marv B joins us. And then the week after that, I got Dave from Mac Geek Gab coming on. And so we've got some things coming up you might want to be a part of. We're live every Thursday, just about. I won't be live on Thanksgiving, which is coming up here on the 24th, but we're live I almost said we're live every Thanksgiving. We're live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. We'll see you back here next week. Maybe a little post show. Christian, you got a few minutes? Can you hang for a few? Okay, maybe a little bit of a post show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody. Good stuff, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Good deal.
Super helpful. Like, I hadn't even seen that board.
I don't know how I skipped over that one. I thought I showed you a ASUS board earlier, and I think it was a Wi-Fi 5 board. And
I think it was.
Yeah, I sent you the X570 Plus motherboard. This is the Pro motherboard. So yeah.
Did you put that in the hardware section already?
I did.
No? Okay, why is it?
I even tagged you.
Hardware. Yeah, there we go. Okay, let's pop this thing open. Guys, if you've got questions for Christian, or you want to continue to comment, go ahead and do that. I'm going to be a little distracted here. Take a look at this. John, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Thanks, John.
Thanks for those. Love it when Christian gets fired up. And you weren't even very fired up tonight. Like, I've seen you way more fired up than that.
Light fire
much
tonight.
But not much more. to be honest, like you've always been. There's been a few times. I think you got mad at HP a couple times.
Times.
The show that I beeped out. You weren't swearing. Let's just
there were no punches held back. Yeah.
But I beeped. There were certain words that I beeped out, and it made it sound like you were swearing. That was super fun. John says nothing will top the quantum computing rant. Oh, and what's the progress on Christian Coin? Are we gonna have a blockchain that you're gonna get started?
John has created this coin that I feel like I'm behind on writing the spec for. So now I don't know. I have to think about it.
Oh, trust me, the last thing you want to do is start a cryptocurrency. That's the last thing you want to do. Okay, the only thing I need to see on this board is these. I'm assuming, I didn't see it in the specs, but those 2.m.2s, I just want to make sure they're both Gen 4s. And then I think it's a buy.
For
PCI
they say PCI 4X4. They should be
4.0. Yeah. PCIe 4.0. I think that's 4th gen, right? Times 4.
Yeah, if you look at the 5th picture on the Amazon list too, it points out the 2 spots and says they're both 4x4 lanes. And they're 2242 socket types. NVMe and SATA.
Yeah. So there's 2 up top and 2 down below. Same. They're the same. Yeah. Okay. That's the one. Don't you think? I mean,
seems like a win to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems like a good. Although I'd love here, let me add this. I'll put it in. There's some things I've got to do. I got to clear out the cart before I can go buy this thing because it's, I put whoa, put things in my cart so that I'll get notifications. Amazon will tell me, hey, this thing in your cart has either gone up or gone down if I just leave it in there, right? And so it's been a incredibly. Oh, well, that's interesting. I put it in my cart and then maybe I just clicked to buy it. It only brought that one over. Now, do you think like, it is, this is not on sale at all. There's absolutely no discount associated with the one. So you think I should leave it in my cart for a couple days and see if a sale pops up on it?
It can't hurt. I was wondering if maybe if any of this type of hardware lowered when they tried to do the like Prime Redux last week or whatever.
Yeah.
But it can't hurt.
Okay. Yeah, I won't pull the trigger on it yet, but it's in the cart, ready to go. Like I don't think that'll hurt. I don't think we're gonna see things go up.
No. Not in this economy.
In this economy, as my daughter would say, prices go up in this economy. So I'll leave it and see what we get.
This is the way.
This is the way. And now I got to figure. Okay, so let's talk through the memory on this thing really quick. What do from a speed perspective, I still don't know a lot. Like, memory comes in all forms and sizes and speeds. For what I'm doing, does it matter? Do I need to get the fastest gaming speed?
No, get nice 3600 chips from a decent brand like a G-Skill, and don't overthink the latencies and the clocks because you're not overclocking. And with the 5600, it's not worth worrying about the timing on the chips. You'd only really start caring about timing on the chips if you're like doing a 5900 or a 5950 and you're looking to get specific latencies with an overclock. For average gaming, it ain't gonna make a hill of beans of difference for a 5600 board.
Would it matter if it's 3200 or does it need to be 36?
Real world difference between the two is probably about 4% or less of like gaming performance.
Yeah.
I think 36 is the nice sweet spot. But you can do 32.
Well, hold on, let me share my screen here so you can see it. I'm talking about it and then it's like, what are you talking about? Share screen window. So Mushkin, which I've had before, I've had a hard drive with them before and had some pretty good experience. This is a 2x32 kit, 3600. 190 bucks. So we're talking just under 400 for that 380. So that is an option in that space. Also, in that same place, this G-Skill.
Yeah, those are nice.
That's come as a matched set, so to speak. I don't know if they technically would say that anymore because I don't think that matters. It used to matter, I don't think it matters anymore. No,
not all that much.
Okay, but 405.
It matters more in servers, but even then, less or so.
Okay, specifically designed for the Ryzen, the AMD Ryzen.
This is not a bad both are fine options, honestly. The nice thing about doing the two at a time is you could see if 64 met your needs, and if you're like, nah, I want more, you have two slots open.
True. I mean, I could start running it and maybe even be able to buy the same brand, right? 6 months from now. Here's the Kingston, their Fury line. Now this is 3200.
Yeah, slightly faster latency, but slower speed, about the same price. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Now this is the budget brand, I'm assuming. And would get me, again, 300 and 340 as opposed to 400. Okay, I'll take that. I'll take your silence on that one. And I know why, but we'll just leave it there. And then Corsair, of course, this is their 3200 too.
That's actually not bad. That's not bad. If you were going to go down to the 3200, that would be probably the way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. In terms of stability, you're never going to go wrong with the Corsair chip. Okay. This will be probably slightly slower than the G Skill at the 3600, but again, you're talking 4 to 5%. So compare the cost and decide if that 5% is worth it to you or not. But
yeah. Well, but what you've confirmed to me, a couple things. What you've confirmed to me is I'm in the right camp, right? I'm in the right space. And then I've got all of these saved in my in my cart, and I use Honey too, so it'll compare it against other things as well. But I can begin to look for that value, and maybe there'll be a ridiculous, like if that Corsair went to like they took $50 off of it, right? And all of a sudden it went from 380 to 330. Well, probably pull the trigger on a 330. If I was looking at that RAM for my usage, I don't think I'm going to notice any difference between 32 and 36, just to be 100% honest on that. I don't
think you will.
Yeah. But at the same token, if they run something on, let's say, the Kingston Fury, which was really designed for gaming, right? I think that's their target market on that. If they took $100 off that, I might, or $90 or $75 or whatever.
Yeah, if
right?
you're doing cart watching, it's fine to leave a few in and just see what moves.
Yeah. That's kind of been the plan on it, is throw those in there, see where they go. I'm in no big hurry, a couple comments. Brian says purchased RAM on OWC and I've been happy with it. It's been a few years though. Not sure if they're still highly regarded or not. OWC, what does that stand for?
Oh, now you're asking me hard questions.
I don't know.
Otherworld Computing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've kind of I'm kind of set up for my tools to run mostly off Amazon's cart, just because it's so freaking convenient. And then Honey will find it, match it at other places. And so if Best Buy was running a ridiculous deal on it or whatever, I could go elsewhere to kind of look for it. It's Christian's kind of nice not to be in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, do you have to have it now? No.
When the market works for you instead of against you.
Yeah. No, it's just kind of like, and guys, if you're listening to the recorded version of this and you got an idea, shoot me a note. I'd love to hear it. I may not take it, but gives me some good indication of what I should be doing. Christian, let me look one at this. I think I had pulled that drive. Let me bring that back up to your hard drive recommendation really quick. Let's pull this back open again. And I think I had that. I had the 770. I think you said
go to the 850.
850.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's.
It's a true PCIe 4 card.
Okay. Let's see if that's SN850. Is that what the SN850? All right. WD1 there. So this is the 1 terabyte.
If you click into that, you'll let you toggle the 2.
Yeah, between that. And definitely have a heat sink on it, right?
You can. I don't remember if that TUF board does come with a built-in heatsink. That's also fine.
Okay.
We'll
throw that in the cart just so I've got a good.
But yeah, it smokes.
Okay, that's a good recommendation. Let me pull this one. Any thoughts on Kingston or Samsung going with their? A lot of guys have used the Samsung.
Yeah, Samsung is a household name. You can't really go wrong. Kingston is a step down for sure.
Okay.
But gets the job done for the average case. So both Samsung and Western Digital, though, I don't think you'd be disappointed.
Okay. Well, I've been using WD drives, so that has had some good luck with them. So there's not too many left.
You got a power supply?
I do. Yeah, I've got this EVGA550 that I think it'll be good enough, modular.
Yep.
I've had it for a while, but I think it'll be especially if I'm going with the 3060, I think that'll be enough.
Perfect.
To power that. Yeah. So I bought it as a backup like a couple of years ago. That guarantees a power supply is never going to go bad if you've got an extra one sitting on the shelf.
Yeah.
So might as well get that out into production and get it used and stop it collecting dust on the shelf at this point. So that'd be a good one to put in. Then I think I'm going to go with a fractal design case. At this point, Bob and Ryan recommended that. Any thoughts? I mean, I'm going to go with a pretty inexpensive case from that perspective, but any thoughts on it from your end?
I have a fractal case and I love it with the glass view.
Yeah. That's kind of going to be the route I'm going to go. So that'll be a decision I'll probably make once I get to where I'm actually starting to put it together, because I order it, get one that's fairly inexpensive, and then I'll be ready to. They have tons of options. I just have to figure out what I want from that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember actually what the exact model is that I ended up with, but I love it. Love it.
Yeah, cool. Guys, if you're listening, still hanging around, same number. Appreciate you guys coming out tonight. I need to let Christian get some rest so he's ready to go for his Friday. And we thank you guys for coming out. We'll have some updates next week. I'll probably some updates next week at the end of the show if I've pulled the trigger on that board, which I probably will here a little bit later. And we get some parts coming in. So we'll see you guys. Take care. Have a good evening. And we'll see you next week.